How's it going, David from Comic Book Investments? So the Batman just came out over the weekend. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see it yet or not, but I wanted to go over some numbers. How did it do its opening weekend? So its opening weekend, it did $128 million, which is pretty good. I think the budget is almost around 200 million. I think it's like 150 to 175. They're not exactly sure, somewhere around there. But remember, you always have to double that because you have to think about advertising. And they do a lot of advertising on bigger movies because they have more invested into it. So the rule of thumb is double it. So you're looking at this thing probably needs to make anywhere from maybe like 350 million to maybe even 400 million, because sometimes bigger movies, they spend a lot more. I think with the Justice League, they spent like, the production budget was like 200 million and they spent like 400 million also on advertising. So rule of thumb, we're looking around 350 to 400 million. So internationally, it brought in about the same, 120 million. So it's up to almost 250 million its opening weekend, which is great. Really, really, really good. But how does it compare to other Batman films? And not just other Batman films, but also firsts, like first Batmans. So here we got The Dark Knight. Sorry, not The Dark Knight. We got Batman from '89. But it brought in 40 million its opening weekend. But I did the math. The average ticket price back then was $3.99 for this year. And now it's $9.16. So it's a little over double. So you're looking at, probably a 90 million opening weekend if it was in today's numbers. It went on to gross $411 million worldwide, which is over double that because of the price of a ticket. So you're looking at probably, I think it was like 2.3 times the amount. So you're looking at, almost $900 million, almost $1 billion this Batman made way back in the day. So that was really, really good. So definitely this new one had a bigger opening than this, but this one had a lot of legs. And that's how older movies generally were back in the day. They were in the theaters longer. There's less competition with movies coming out. And so they lasted much, much, much longer. I think Titanic was in the theaters for like a year or something like that, or close to it. Now movies are in, and 3 months later they're on streaming. But back then it wasn't so much the case. All right, then let's see. We got The Dark Knight. Now this is the second one in the series, but this had a domestic opening of $158 million. Let's look at Begins. All right, Begins had about a $50 million opening weekend. Not too good. A budget of $150 million, and it went on to make $373 million. So honestly, not that good. But this is also 2005, so those numbers are much higher. It's probably around the $500 million mark if you compare it to today's numbers. So pretty good. But yeah, not a very big opening. I remember when this movie opened, there wasn't a lot of chatter about it, but it was good enough to do a sequel, which leads us to The Dark Knight. This made over $1 billion in 2008 money, which was probably, I think the average price was around $7 a ticket. So you're looking at, compared to like $9 a ticket, so you're looking at probably like a much higher, like maybe 1.2, 1.3 billion dollars is probably what it's actually in today's numbers, bringing in almost, probably 650 million in today's numbers for domestic. Opening weekend is probably around 175. Now, why did this one do so well compared to Batman Begins? Well, if you have a movie that people really love, they'll turn up for the second movie even more. You notice that in all Marvel movies. The first of Marvel movies, like the first Thor, first Captain America, stuff like that, they were all opening weekends was like, 50 million or something like that. They go on to make like 300 million or so, 400. But then the next one in the series, if it was good, would go on to make a ton. And then what happened with Dark Knight was amazing. So The Dark Knight Rises, a bunch of people showed up again, had an opening weekend box office about the same as before, but a lot of people showed up for it. Not as good though, in my personal opinion. Then we got Lego Batman. Had a budget of 80 million, it's not that much, made 53 million, and went on to make 312 million worldwide, which is really good on an 800 million or 80 million budget. What else we got here? We got Batman versus Superman. This is technically, I guess, the first Batman of this, iteration. 166 million on a budget of 250, went on to go, almost 900 million. Didn't hit the $1 billion mark. Now, the thing is, the Joker hit $1 billion without China. This was not released in China and hit $1 billion. And it had an opening of almost 100 million. So almost what this had. Now, here's the thing. Yes, the opening weekend, everyone that wants to see the Batman and is a fan of Batman is going to go opening weekend. But let's see how it does second, third, and fourth weekend. That really determines, because we have something like, No Way Home. Almost pushing $2 billion. Its opening weekend was a little over 250 million. Amazing. But it's because week after week after week, it was just bringing in so many viewers. It's so all the time. If you compare it to Homecoming, the first in the series, it almost did $1 billion in Homecoming. Bringing in right around what Batman brought in, 120 million. So it really depends. How well is this going to continue going? If we look at something like Captain Marvel, they had 150 million opening weekend and went on to bring $1.1 billion. And I didn't think it was all that great, but it had a lot of hype around it. When you look at Catwoman, $100 million budget. Oh my God. This is stupid. Domestic opening, 16 million. It only made, look at that. It only made 40 million because no one cared. No one watched it. International, another 40 million. 82 worldwide on a production of 100 plus advertising. You're looking at 200 million. They lost a ton on this one. I totally forgot Halle Berry's Catwoman. Ugh, such a terrible movie. So the question that remains is, I have a question. In my personal opinion, if the Batman doesn't make $1 billion or close to it, like 900 and something, I would assume that the studio would think that as a fail. Now you're probably like, but David, it was only 175 million to make plus, advertising. They only have to clear 350 to 400 million to be profitable. I'm like, yes, I agree. They only have to clear around 400 million to be profitable, which is good. But this is the Batman. This is Warner Brothers' biggest IP. I can't think of another IP that's bigger than this. Like, you got the Harry Potter series, but that's not as big as Batman. You got Superman, but even Superman's not as big as Batman. Let's be honest. Superman, if you look at new DC comics, it's like 75% of all comic books coming are Batman related. Either like Nightwing or who knows, Harley Quinn, Joker, something like that. Joker made $1 billion, and the Joker had a much smaller budget. What did the Joker had? The Joker had a budget of $55 million. $55 million and made $1 billion. The Joker. So if I was a studio executive, if this doesn't clear $1 billion, I think of it as a fail. Even though it made money, but it's their biggest IP. This is like their best horse in the race, like the sure thing that can win. And it doesn't crack $1 billion when, Spider-Man's over here making $2 billion. And Spider-Man's, arguably Marvel's biggest IP. So, but yeah, I would just, and I get it. This is the first Batman in the series, and that's the third one. But I would just, if Captain Marvel can make over $1 billion, like the Batman should be able to make $1 billion. So that's why I'm like thinking, I would imagine the studio think this would be like not good if it doesn't make $1 billion. Like they're happy. They made a ton of money. But when the Joker off of $55 million makes $1 billion, and that's the first, it didn't have a very big opening, but it had legs. And that's the key is, will it have legs? And the Joker didn't even open up in China. So I would imagine this thing has to make $1 billion. And the question is, can it? It's on pace, right? 250 million opening weekend. This depends on how many other weekends it continues to make money. Because obviously the first couple weekends or weeks that's out, it's just going to be fans. Mostly fans. Everyone loves Batman's. But then after that, it's like, you got to get those fans to view it again, and you got to get the non-comic book people to turn out for it. So that will be interesting to see if this, I mean, I think it could. I hope it does. And I get it, like there's other firsts that don't make $1 billion, but this is Batman. This is Batman. I get it. Thor 1 didn't make $1 billion. Is that a fail? Stuff like that. This is Batman. This is the biggest IP. They've also had tons of Batman movies in the past that the Joker made $1 billion. So this has to. It has to. That is the question. I'm wondering if it will. Obviously, based off these numbers alone, you're going to get a sequel, no matter what. Unless all of a sudden no one shows up from here on out, and it just brings in another 100 million. But yeah, you're getting a sequel for sure. I think it's dumb how they're already I hate it when studios do this. They're like, oh, before the movie's even released, oh, the movie's so good, we're going to have a spin-off of Arkham on HBO Max, and then a spin-off of The Penguin, and a spin-off of this, and a spin-off of all these spin-offs, non-stop spin-offs. Oh, it's so great because we're having all these spin-offs. It's why don't you release the movie first? And first of all, why would you want... They're having Gotham PD or something like that. I'm like, what? No, these studio executives miss the whole reason. People like Batman. They don't want to see Gotham PD and watch another stupid cop show. I think they even had thing. Wasn't it called Gotham? It was about Commissioner Gordon when he was younger. It's no, people want to see Batman and Batman's villains. I don't want to see the cops running around doing cop stuff. That's boring. I want to see Batman. Just make a Batman TV show. And make it high budget. Figure it out. But yeah, so let me know. What do you think? Do you think the Batman can cross $1 billion? And if it doesn't, do you think the studio would think that as a fail? Yes, I understand they're making a ton of money. I get that. But do you think that internally they would the Joker made $1 billion and Batman can't make $1 billion? And the Joker was rated R. So less people being able to see it, which... in my personal opinion, people were oh my gosh, the Batman it's such hard R. I'm or PG-13. I'm no, it wasn't. Watch The Expendables 3. That's PG-13. They're literally shooting people left and right, throwing knives. You just can't show blood. This wasn't even, I don't even think there was any cursing that I could think of. Maybe a couple here and there. But it's because of the dark tone, that makes it R or hard PG-13. It wasn't, no. The violence wasn't even anything special either. So yeah, it was as a normal PG-13. I don't think it was a hard PG-13. Anyways, let me know what you think.